Hello, everybody. Welcome into GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. Hope everybody is having a great day so far. There is a lot to get into. It was the franchise tag deadline today in the NFL, but that wasn't the only news. We'll go over all of the major news, including people getting cut, stars getting extended, and everything going on in the NFL in our first segment. Then we'll do our post-combine mock draft. Our mock draft 3.0 coming up in segment 2 before diving into the Mavericks. Kyrie Irving done for the season after tearing his ACL. We'll talk about what that means for them as they try to cling on to a play-in spot at the 10 seed in the Western Conference. After that, we continue our series of breaking down every single NFL offseason and going over what an MLB season might look like for each and every team. Today, we take a look at the Vikings and the Reds. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, March 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our first topic, which is just an update for the wild and crazy stuff going around the NFL right now and what I'd like to go in as the NFL roundup. The big storyline today was supposed to be that it's a franchise tag deadline. We were supposed to get franchise tags from all over the sport. Instead, we only saw two. Just one yesterday and one a few days before that in Kansas City tagging their all-pro guard Trey Smith, and now the Cincinnati Bengals tagging superstar wide receiver T. Higgins. The two tags are the fewest used in an offseason since 1994. It has been 30 years since this few amount of teams decided to put a tag on their guys. Now, there were a couple other ones that were potentially supposed to get tagged today, one being Osa Odigizua of the Dallas Cowboys. Instead, they extend him 4 years, $80 million, $20 million AAV. If he had gone with the franchise tag, he would have gotten more money. The franchise tag for defensive linemen is sitting around $25 million. Instead, he gets $20 million a year for some extra term. Odigizua was supposed to be one of the top defensive linemen out on the market. The Cowboys lock up one of their most important free agents. But when we look at the teams the people that were franchise tagged, obviously the big one is T. Higgins. T. Higgins now on his second year with the franchise tag, meaning he is 140% rather than 120% of what he would have made last year. He was owed $26 million this year on the tag. He's still looking to make a long-term deal work. But the Bengals have a lot to figure out. They still need to pay Jamar Chase. That's not going to work. They still need to pay Trey Hendrickson. And it seems like T. Higgins is just that odd man out. That's just seemingly what's going on all the time. I don't think he's the most important guy to pay. In fact, I think he's by far the least important guy to pay. If you let Trey Hendrickson walk, it's a disaster for a defense that already was as bad as they were last year. Losing a guy that led the league in sacks is inexcusable. You have to pay that man a bunch of money, and then you have to pay one of the top two receivers in the league in Jamar Chase a lot of money as well. T. Higgins is unfortunately just the guy that you have to let go sometimes. And if you're going to be the Bengals that are very cheap in their contracts, sometimes you just can't bring these guys back. And T. Higgins is one of those guys that's just really hard to do if they're going to continue to operate the way they are. Someone else that was potentially out there for franchise tags, Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold was not tagged by the Minnesota Vikings by 4 o'clock p.m. today. Still a possibility he returns to the Vikings, though. The Vikings, of course, have their quote-unquote franchise guy in J.J. McCarthy. The reason I put that in quotes is because we haven't seen J.J. McCarthy out on the field yet. The reason is the injury he suffered. He looked solid in his lone appearance in the preseason, but that's not enough to get me super excited about a guy that I wasn't super high on coming out of college. He gets drafted in the top 15 picks. They clearly believe in him. They would not have taken him that high if they did not. But the question is, who's the backup plan? Are they going to stick with a guy like Daniel Jones, who's a free agent right now? Are they going to go out and get a guy like Aaron Rodgers in case J.J. McCarthy isn't ready right away? Are they going to go out and are they going to keep Nick Mullins around or one of their other backup quarterbacks? What is their plan there? Is J.J. McCarthy going to be ready to go? If not, Sam Darnold could see himself coming back. I don't really see him returning to the Vikings. Sam Darnold, I think, is looking to get a starting job, and I think he will get a starting job somewhere in the NFL, but I don't think it's going to be super great. He's going to have to go somewhere where the situation isn't nearly as good as the Vikings. Sam Darnold, not tagged by the Vikings, but probably for the best for the Vikings anyway to get QB competition out if they're really all in on J.J. McCarthy. Outside of the franchise tags, there was still a lot of big news. Trades, releases, and extensions. We'll start off with the release as Davante Adams, the superstar receiver currently, or I said formerly, of the New York Jets, was cut today, clearing up $30 million in cap space for the team. The real question comes, what is his plan after this? The first reaction for a lot of people, including myself, is he's just going to go wherever Aaron Rodgers is. They've been a tandem basically everywhere that they've gone. He took a brief pit stop over in Las Vegas when he played with his college quarterback of Derek Carr. That didn't really work out. Aaron Rodgers is a free agent. He's also a free agent. But the other pole is the West Coast. Aaron Rodgers seeming like he wants to play on the West Coast, but it seems like the draw of the West Coast is a lot bigger for a guy like Davante Adams. He's still a guy that can come in and be a top receiver on your team. So any team on the West Coast should be real happy to get him. The Niners, after moving off of Debo, I know they're trying to get younger, but bringing him in, if you can get him for cheap enough, there's no reason not to. The Seattle Seahawks, there's some rumors that he's moving off of DK Metcalf. Bring in Davante Adams to replace him right there. You go down and play for the Chargers, who desperately need a receiver. He could go opposite of Ladd McConkey. That would be a great fit for him as well, and they've got the money to pay him. If he wants to stay west, maybe he just returns to playing with the Raiders, or go on the opposite side and play for the Arizona Cardinals. Play next to Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that's a really good spot for him as well. The Cardinals have the money to do it. If I had to nail it down, it's either follow Rodgers or go to the Cardinals or the Chargers. There's a lot of options out there for Davante Adams, though, and we will see what happens as the offseason continues. But Saquon Barkley. That's the big news here. Saquon Barkley gets a massive new extension. Coming off of a year where he won the Offensive Player of the Year, Saquon Barkley gets a 2-year, $41.2 million extension. Not just making him the highest paid running back in NFL history, but adding him to a list of a lot of highly paid players on this Eagles team. This is an Eagles roster that is littered with stars, and they're littered with stars that have been paid as well. It's a tough thing to do in the NFL, but with the cap space going up as much as it is, you get that extra little budget to throw in for Saquon Barkley. The question is, does the rest of the running back market follow? Is the rest of the running back market obviously not the same as Saquon Barkley, but a guy like James Cook has expressed his interest in being paid as much or more than Saquon Barkley. He brought up $15 million as his number. Is that number going up for him? Is that number staying the same? James Cook, in my opinion, and in most people's opinion, is still not that same level of running back as Saquon Barkley, as good as he is. Tied for the league lead in touchdowns last year with the king, Derrick Henry. But this is a really interesting question when you get to the fallout of running backs in the NFL. You've obviously got a bunch of the running backs from last year's offseason. getting paid handsomely and it working out. Now Aaron Jones, a free agent, the top free agent running back. You've got a couple other guys, Javonte Williams, that might benefit, Najee Harris, that might benefit from a booming free agent running back market. Saquon Barkley gets his big money a year after moving away from the New York Giants and winning a Super Bowl. And the last big piece of news from around the NFL today is with the Bears. They finally started to address their big issue. They go out and get a former Pro Bowl guard, Jonah Jackson, from the Los Angeles Rams for a 6th-round pick. Jackson played just 4 games last season after dealing with an injury. He's 1 year into a 3-year, $51 million deal, so $17 million a year for Jonah Jackson. But the Bears, again, they have the money to do it. We talked about it when we broke down the ideal offseason for the Bears yesterday. This is something they need to do. Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. They have a lot of starters going out the door, so they don't need to worry about cutting them. Bringing in a guy that's a former Pro Bowler, a guy that at minimum, if he's healthy, is going to move your offensive line from near the bottom of the league to average, which is all they really need to really get a lot going under this Ben Johnson offense. I love that they're being aggressive. I love that they found the need, they've identified it, and they said, this is how we're going. This is how aggressive we're going to be. Before the franchise tag deadline is done, we are going to address this position, and it's just the start. This is huge for the Bears. I love this trade, and I think this is the most impactful move of the day. But a busy day in the NFL as a lot of teams changing their strategies, getting ready for the chess match that is the NFL draft. After the combine, a lot of teams have changed their minds or updated their prospect lists. I have as well. We have Mock Draft 3.0 coming up for you, post-combine mock draft in just a second. We'll come to that next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, March 4th, if you are just tuning in. We just finished going over all the news from around the NFL, including Saquon Barkley's new deal. We saw Davante Adams get cut, the franchise tag deadline come and go, and much more. In this segment, we turn our attention to the draft, the next major piece of the next major event on the calendar in the NFL offseason is the NFL draft. We're going to talk about Mock Draft 3.0 post-combine coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports for me here on a beautiful Tuesday, March 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into Mock Draft 3.0, starting off with the number 1 overall pick, The Tennessee Titans, I should preface this with there are no trades in my mock. That's a little bit too much, especially this early. We're just going to keep the order as is. As we get later on into the draft season, we'll start to incorporate some trades into our mock here. But starting off at pick number 1, the Tennessee Titans select Cam Ward. There's lots of buzz around this number 1 overall pick, and with good reason. This is not a quarterback that is a must-grab prospect, and the Titans have a lot of holes. They could grab the best offensive lineman available. That would do them wonders. They could grab the best pass rusher available. That would do them wonders. There are a lot of big names out there that would help this Tennessee Titans squad, but at the end of the day, when you have the number 1 overall pick, you have to take the quarterback. This is not an option where you can run with Will Levis for another year. It just isn't going to work. We've seen how it works in the past, and they got that number 1 overall pick this year by giving Will Levis the chance. They benched him for Mason Rudolph. One of their prospective GM candidates said he proposed a plan to bring back Will Levis as their quarterback. He didn't get the job. I wonder why, right? I think this is just they're done with him. Whether that be they bring in a guy like an Aaron Rodgers, I still think Cam Ward, as it stands right now, is by far and away the best quarterback and is the pick you have to take at number 1. At number 2, we have Penn State edge rusher Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter, a freak of nature. He is dealing with that injury in his foot. He says he's all good to go. We'll wait to see on the pro day whether or not that is for real. But Abdul Carter, freak of nature. Love this pick, especially as a replacement for Myles Garrett, which I and a lot of other people assume is going to happen despite the Browns not really willing to budge on that matter. It doesn't seem like Garrett is very willing to budge on that either. Abdul Carter is the closest thing to a Myles Garrett replacement you could get. No one is replacing Myles Garrett, but it's as close as you can right now, and I think you got to do that when you have the opportunity to. And number 3, this is the first real shakeup from our mock draft 2.0. I have the New York Giants taking Travis Hunter, the wide receiver cornerback out of Colorado. Now, a lot of connection has been made between the Giants and Shedeur Sanders. But since the combine, some buzz has been going on about him slipping in the draft. If you go and look at all the mock drafts that came out post-combine, he fell as far as 21, I saw, to the Steelers. Some people didn't even have him in the first round. Shedeur Sanders, I think, is a quarterback that needs to be developed properly. Travis Hunter is someone that I think is tough to pass up if you're a New York Giants team that's looking to go out and build the best team possible. They need corner, they need wide receiver. Why not just address both with that number 3 overall pick? And I think they'll go out and get a veteran quarterback, whether that be Aaron Rodgers or Jameis Winston. You grab a guy like that, and then you go and get a Jackson Dart in the second round. That's someone that I think would be really good for the Giants here to sit behind for a year, but I do really love Travis Hunter at number 3. Number 4, they have the Patriots taking Tetroa McMillan, T-Mac out of Arizona, the top wide receiver in this class. He is what I think is the clear and away guy that is most likely to succeed if you're giving out high school awards, right? Not necessarily making him the best prospect in the draft, but he's the guy that if I had to pick someone today, the safest prospect in the draft, it would be T-Mac. He's someone that has the length, the size, the speed, and he did it at Arizona in triple coverage and double coverage and quadruple coverage. He just dominated. T-Mac is someone that I think is a surefire success in the NFL, and the Patriots desperately need some weapons for Drake May. You address that offensive line later. Give me T-Mac right now. At number 5, I think the Jaguars select who, in my opinion, is the best prospect in this draft, Mason Graham. Mason Graham, an absolute monster on the inside, especially against the run. You've got some solid pass rushers on defense. You've got Josh Hines Allen off the edge, Trayvon Walker off the edge. You don't really need another edge rusher, but a great nose tackle, a guy that can step in and stop anybody in that A gap, in that B gap. Mason Graham is that guy. He is a perfect fit in Jacksonville. I love this selection. I think he is going to be the home run hitter if this was the draft that went through. This is a must get for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And number 6, The Raiders get their guy, right? Someone that the Raiders seemingly were interested from the middle of the season, Shedeur Sanders. Sanders is not a guy that I think falls out of the top 10. I think if the Giants pass on him, the Raiders are not going to overlook him. The Raiders have had eyes for Shedeur Sanders for a very long time, and I just can't see a world where if he's available at number 6, they don't swoop up and pick him. At number 7, I have the Jets taking cornerback out of Texas, Jahdae Barron. He's my CB1. I love what he's able to do in pass coverage. The Jets are most likely going to lose DJ Reed. They need to get a quarterback. They need to address that. But with this spot in the draft, there just isn't a quarterback available for them to get. Hopefully they deal with that in free agency or they get that in the later rounds of the draft. But they do need a corner. They need to retool that defense. And I love Jahdae Barron for them at number 7. At number 8, the Panthers really just need the best available defender, and for my money, that's Will Johnson. I think there's a couple of really good corners here at the top of the draft. Will Johnson out of Michigan. Long is someone that I think is going to do wonders for them in the pass game. They were one of the worst teams in the league last year against the pass. They're going to get Derek Brown back, so as much as the run was an issue for them last year, getting that big guy in the middle is immediately going to do wonders. I think addressing the pass defense first, especially with a lot of the other big run defenders, not really worth a top 10 pick, in my opinion. Will Johnson is someone that I think is the best defender on the board right now. At number 9, I have the Saints taking James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. A bit of a weird one. He measured weird at the combine, but he still showed up, had a pretty good 40 time, was pretty fast and athletic, and had burst. He also has been productive at Tennessee. He's been really good. He was a guy that was mocked to be potentially the number 1 overall pick in the way too early mock drafts. The Saints, another team like the Panthers, who just kind of need best available, especially with their cap space. Getting an edge rusher like James Pierce Jr. should be really good for them. And at number 9, he's someone that I can't really pass up. At number 10, the Bears. Offensive line. What did we say? Offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. They get the best one in the class fall right into their lap. Will Campbell out of LSU. This is a massive get for them. This is what the Bears wish would happen draft day. If Will Campbell finds a way to fall to them, they will be elated, over the moon. It will make the rest of their offseason so much easier. I've seen a lot of guys mock Ashton Genty to the Bears. It doesn't matter that Ben Johnson was on a team that drafted Jahmyr Gibbs this early in the draft before. As good as Ashton Genty is, this is not a team that you throw Jahmyr Gibbs onto and he's going to immediately change the way that it works. The reason Jahmyr Gibbs was so successful was because the offensive line of the Lions was already set. They need to figure out the offensive line first, and then you can go get a running back in a very deep running back class. You can get a really good one in the second round. Do not pass up on the round 1 offensive lineman if you are the Bears. At number 11, the San Francisco 49ers select Mike Green, edge rusher out of Marshall. Mike Green, I love his production. Mike Green is 17 sacks last season. He's a guy that, yes, played in the Sun Belt, but still is really fast, really athletic, and is putting up numbers. He is going to be great opposite of Nick Bosa. They just need someone that can apply pressure so Bosa doesn't get all those double teams, someone that can be dangerous off the edge, and Mike Green is exactly what the doctor ordered for the San Francisco 49ers. At number 12, we're going with Ashton Genty, the Dallas Cowboys on the clock. Ashton Genty, the best running back in this class, runner-up in Heisman voting this year. He's going to be a difference maker for the Cowboys. They desperately need a run game. Getting Ashton Genty in there is the first step to help fix this Cowboys team from what was a disastrous season last year. 13, the Miami Dolphins draft their tackle Armand Membou out of Memphis. Armand Membou is a big boy. He tested really well at the combine too. He looked strong, he looked fast, he looked athletic, and that's exactly what the Dolphins need. They need someone that can help protect Tua on his blind side. Putting him over there is going to be massive for the Dolphins. Membou at 13. At 14, offense once again. Tyler Warren off the board to the Colts. Tyler Warren is a gadget guy. I think he's going to do wonders over there out of Penn State. They desperately need a tight end. He's athletic. He's a guy that can make he can make contested catches, and Tyler Warren, I think, is going to fit really good. A big target for Anthony Richardson, assuming he keeps his job. Tyler Warren at number 14. 15, Shamar Stewart, the freak of the combine, the guy that broke all of the measurements, the third best performance in the combine ever by an edge rusher. Shamar Stewart is a freak of nature. He's someone that the Falcons would love to get. It's going to be great if they fall him. The Falcons desperately need a guy that can put pressure on the passer, and he's someone that I think fits that bill perfectly. At 16, another edge rusher, another guy that tested amazingly at the combine, Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. He had pretty good numbers out of the combine. That's a big jump up for him at 16. Maybe it's a little bit high, but I just love the way that he plays the game. I love the way that he's able to get pressure, and they need someone that's going to come in and just attack the quarterback. 17, we have Malachi Starks. They need a safety. Malachi Starks I still mock him to the Bengals. I've seen a lot of guys mock the Bengals for an offensive lineman, but if they don't draft a defender, they're doing something wrong here. Malachi Starks out of Georgia is to the Bengals. At 18, another team that I don't think should go anywhere else but offensive line, Kelvin Banks Jr. He is a massive man, and the fact that he's fallen this far to 18 is kind of a little bit of an insult to him. He's a very good tackle, number 3 tackle on the board for me, but the fact that he went all the way down at 18 is just because there were a lot of other guys that did not take tackles in the top 10. At 19, Jihad Campbell out of Alabama, the linebacker, as a replacement or next guy up for an aging linebacker in Levante David. They also need another linebacker next to Levante David, but to have the next in line, the heir to Levante David, already in the system figuring it out, is going to do wonders for this team when they go and try and make a smooth transition in a year or two, or maybe even this year if Levante David ends up retiring. At number 20, the Broncos get their tight end, Colston Loveland, who's arguably the best pure tight end on the board right now. Colston Loveland, I love what he's able to do. Look, he's a guy that is big, physical, can make contested catches, is the guy that will be perfect for Bo Nix. I'm not a guy that loves Bo Nix, but getting a big target for Bo Nix over the middle, that's athletic, quick, Loveland is going to do amazing stuff with the Denver Broncos. At 21, the Steelers get a receiver, arguably wide receiver 2, Luther Burden III out of Mizzou. This is an athlete. He's not someone that I think is going to be a pure wide receiver 1, but putting him next to George Pickens should take off a lot of the stress that Pickens has had to deal with, and giving Justin Fields or whoever the quarterback of the Steelers is going to be next season another target is a must get at 21. This is by far the best pick for them. I could understand them going with another one of the receivers. I've got a run at receiver here. They've got the pick of the litter. I think Luther Burden just barely edges out Egbuka, and that's why I've got him here at 21. But speaking of, Emeka Egbuka at 22 to the Chargers. The Chargers, much like last year, still need a receiver. Ladd McConkey did amazing stuff, but on his own, he wasn't enough in the playoffs, and that really showed. Getting an athlete like Egbuka is going to do amazing stuff for Jim Harbaugh and this Chargers offense. I really think this is a massive pick for them, and the fact that you have a guy like Egbuka fall into their lap is amazing. At 23, Matthew Golden, the run on the receivers here, 21, 22, 23, as the Packers go out and get their first offensive weapon at wide receiver in the first round in forever. Right? In nearly 20 years. They go out there and they get their true wide receiver 1, a guy that tested amazingly at the combine, the fastest wide receiver out of Texas. He is amazing. Matthew Golden, 23. 24, we got Kenneth Grant out of Michigan. The defensive lineman, the big boy in the middle, is there to replace a couple guys that are leaving in Minnesota. They're able to replace their defensive line, get their big run stoppers in there. I love this pick for the Minnesota Vikings coming out of Michigan. At 25, Josh Simmons. He only falls this far because of injuries, but if anybody is mocking anything but offensive line to the Texans, respectfully, they're dumb. The Texans' biggest and really only weakness last season, that's not true, not their only weakness, but by far their biggest one, was offensive line. It is what killed them in every single major game that they lost. It killed them in the major games that they won, right? It killed them. They need offensive line, and Josh Simmons, when healthy, is arguably the best tackle in this class. At 26, another tackle. Of the Rams trade away a tackle. Now they go out and get one in Gray Zabel. I love Zabel coming out of North Dakota State University. He is a hard-nosed football player. He will clear the path in the run game. McVay loves those guys. I think this is exactly what the Rams need to revamp that offensive line. That was honestly the weakness of this team last year. Be it because injury or no, they still really need another guy in there, and Gray Zabel is there to answer the call. At 27, Mykel Williams. He falls a bit, but one of the elite pass rushers out of Georgia is here. The Ravens get a good one. They're always really good at drafting, and it never hurts to go and get a rusher out of Georgia. Mykel Williams falling to 27 is a gift. Likewise, Jalen Walker falling to 28 for the Lions is a gift as well. Jalen Walker is going to fit that hole at either linebacker or edge. Put him at outside linebacker as a guy that likes to rush the passer mostly. He should do wonders. Jalen Walker is a guy that's going to be amazing in the NFL. You can never go wrong drafting guys in the front seven from Georgia, really. At 29, this is where our run on defensive tackles goes a little bit. Darius Alexander out of Toledo goes to the Commanders. If there's one thing the Commanders need to address the most, it's their run defense. There's a lot of other holes on that defense, but getting arguably the best run defender still available in the draft in Darius Alexander out of Toledo is the right answer. Darius Alexander is a big boy you can use to plug up the middle next to Johnny Newton, who they drafted last year. That's going to be a formidable duo up the middle if they get their playing time right. I love this pick for the Commanders. At 30, Derek Harmon, another guy coming in. Another guy that the Bills need just to plug up the middle. It was a toss-up between Alexander and Harmon for the Commanders at 29. I think the Bills draft whichever one they don't take there coming up. They both desperately need a guy to plug up the middle. At 31, the biggest weakness for the Chiefs, outside on the offensive line, the tackle. So the best tackle left in this draft, Josh Connerly Jr., goes here at 31. The Chiefs, again, they need to address that revolving door at left tackle. They go out and they get Josh Connerly Jr. in the first round. It should immediately help them get back to the Super Bowl for the fourth straight season. And at 32, the Philadelphia Eagles addressed the cornerback position. After they cut both James Bradbury and Darius Slay today, they get the best corner available in Siobhan Ravel. I've seen a lot of guys mock the corner out of Kentucky. I don't really like him. I love Ravel, though. He's coming off of an injury, but he still is, in my opinion, the third best corner in this class by a mile. And they're just going to continue to dominate with the way this team is built with their young corners. You have Quinion Mitchell, and of course you have Cooper DeJean on the inside. You add one more young guy to that secondary core. This is a very dangerous team. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my mock draft. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention over to basketball. The Mavericks have not had the greatest season. In fact, I would call it a disastrous season. One that might be one of the worst in NBA history after coming off of finals. We'll talk about that, what's going on with them after Kyrie Irving tears his ACL last night, and much more coming up next here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, March 4th, if you are just tuning in. We just finished going over Mock Draft 3.0. In this segment, we turn our attention over to basketball. Kyrie Irving out for the season. The Mavericks have continued to deal with the injury issue for a very long time this season. One more to add to the pile. We'll talk about what that means and review what's gone on since they traded Luka, or really since Luka's been hurt. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, March 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit of Kyrie Irving. The Mavs' disaster season continues as Kyrie Irving tore his ACL last night. That adds to a seemingly ever-increasing list of star players dealing with injuries for this Dallas Mavericks team. The Dallas Mavericks, who flirted with a top 6, top 5 seed when fully healthy this season after coming off of a finals berth last year, have fallen so far from grace that they now have their fan base rioting, the ticket prices going up, fans getting kicked out, the GM being the most unpopular man in the state of Texas right now. It is a mess. It has been a disaster season, and that might even be an understatement. It's one of the worst turn of events from a franchise that was as close to a championship as you possibly can get to this. And we're going to break it down for you. Starting off in December, the first part of this timeline, December 25th, Luka has his calf injury. It comes in a loss that they suffered in that game. That wasn't a big deal. Luka's had his fair share of injuries in the past, but it's something that he could come back from in a couple months after the All-Star break was reported, and then everything would be just fine. You still have the guys that can come in and keep this team healthy. You have Kyrie Irving, who was playing incredible basketball all season long. Klay Thompson can go off any given night. Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford down low, as well as a couple other key pieces that have stepped up and played pretty good basketball for them this season. And it seemed like it was working. They were playing up to that 6th seed, out of the play-in. They were near the top half of the West. And then January 22nd, Derek Lively fractures his foot, but that's fine. They're still in there. It's a big loss, but Derek Lively, you still have a guy in Daniel Gafford that can come in and play that center position. So it's not the end of the world. But then in the last month, starting on February 2nd, everything starts to spiral out of control. Midnight that night, Nico Harrison, in silence, surprising everyone, even the insiders, trades Luka Doncic for Anthony Davis and Maxi Kleber, right? Max Christie, right? This is a massive deal. One of the biggest trades in NBA history in the dark of night. And that starts what already was a little bit of a downtrodden year into full-on disaster. They trade Luka Doncic. The city riots. They spray paint near the Dirk statue. They protest outside the games. Fans get kicked out. Prices go up. Players that they traded away start to go off. And on February 8th, it all seems to be better, right? Anthony Davis makes his debut 6 days after arriving in Dallas. He plays 31 minutes of amazing basketball before getting hurt. He has not returned to action. Now, he is expected to return at the earliest in 3 days. I don't know if that's going to happen, but Anthony Davis makes his debut, has played 31 minutes of basketball. They gave away their franchise for so far 31 minutes of basketball. But the bad news doesn't even stop there. 3 days after that, Daniel Gafford injures his knee, a serious injury that's going to keep him out for at least another month or so. And then yesterday, March 4th, Kyrie Irving out for the season, a guy that had been the best player on this basketball team by a country mile, a guy keeping this team afloat as they sit in the 10 seed in the West right now, enough ahead of the other teams that they were probably going to hold on to that lead. But still, without Kyrie, this is a team that is directionless, without a real star that is healthy. Let's go through that injury report real quick, right? Obviously, Kyrie Irving out for the season. Anthony Davis out until at least March 7th, at least. And now with Kyrie gone, I don't know how much they're going to rush him back. Daniel Gafford out until at least April 2nd. Derek Lively out until at least April 2nd. The only time they would come back is at the very end of the season or playoffs. PJ Washington, a guy that was really productive for them this season, out until at least March 7th with an ankle injury. And then Dante Exum, just to add a little bit more poison there, out until March 7th. That is a full starting lineup of players with a sixth man out due to injury. That is ridiculous. This is a team that made the finals last year, a team that then traded away their star and then got paid, then is now paying for it with bad karma, right? This is a team that should probably tank, but I don't know how the city of Dallas would feel. I don't know if the city of Dallas would survive if they tanked, being quite honest, right? This is a team that desperately needed to go out and be good after that trade of Luka Doncic. Instead, everything has fallen apart. The cards have fallen in this house of cards, right? They are completely spiraling out of control, and this is honestly could be considered one of the worst months in the history of basketball that one team has faced. Misfortune after miscalculation after misfortune after injury, everything is going wrong for them right now. And I don't really know where they go from here, if I'm being completely honest with you. This is a team that has broken a fan base that has lost their hope. And when your fan base doesn't care, it just makes everything that much harder. I think they have to blow it up. As close to blow it up as they can. Kyrie Irving has an opt-out after this season, a player opt-out. So either the Mavs are going to have to pay him a whole lot of money to come back after he tears his ACL, a 32-year-old guard. He's going to have to change the way he plays his game forever. A guy that loves to go and play fast, aggressive, quick cuts, all about dribbling and getting past these guys. It's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a hard rehab for Kyrie Irving. I hope he gets better and he plays basketball soon. But it's a tough spot for the Mavs to be in, and it's a position they've kind of put themselves in with the moves they've made over the last month or so. But let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear them. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to our continuing series. What would the perfect offseason look like for each and every NFL team? Today, we turn our attention to the Minnesota Vikings. We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found. For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, March 4th, if you are just tuning in. We just finished going over what a disaster month, disaster season it has been for the Dallas Mavericks, especially after losing their best player all season in Kyrie Irving to a torn ACL last night. In this segment, we turn our attention over back to the NFL, taking a look at what a perfect offseason might look like for the Minnesota Vikings. But before we do that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, March 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into a little bit about the Minnesota Vikings. What would a perfect offseason look like for this team? First of all, what did they do last season? 13-4 last year, second place at 13-4 in their division behind the number 1 seed in the NFC, the Detroit Lions. They obviously had a game where pseudo playoff game, they could have gotten that number 1 overall seed if they had won. Instead, they fall and then lose in the wild card round to the Los Angeles Rams. 2 back-to-back bad performances leaves a bad taste in the mouth of Vikings fans for their quarterback, Sam Darnold, who is now a free agent. Speaking of free agency, they have a lot, and they have a lot of key guys that are free agents as well. They've got $63 million, 6th in the NFL to deal with, but they're losing a lot of guys. A lot of starters, including left tackle Cam Robinson, who they traded for midseason after an injury to their left tackle. Starter quarterback Sam Darnold. Starting cornerback Byron Murphy, as well as Stephon Gilmore. Starting running back Aaron Jones. A solid depth piece at quarterback in Shaquille Griffin. Jerry Tillery at defensive line. Dalton Reisner at left guard. Jonathan Bullard, defensive tackle Jihad Ward, Camus Gruger-Hill at linebacker, Patrick Jones, backup running back Cam Akers, and safety Cam Bynum. All of these guys are free agencies. A lot of starters, the most starters that are free agencies that we have covered so far as we've gotten through most of the NFC so far. They have the most starters as free agents, but that means they just have a lot of money to spend. What are they going to do with it? Well, who do they need to re-sign first? I think they need to re-sign one of their corners. The guy that I would prioritize is Byron Murphy. He's the youngest of the bunch. He's the leader in that. He's been a leader in that locker room. He is someone that they need to bring back, right? Harrison Smith, also considering retirement. That's something you need to think about as well. So maybe you got to bring back Cam Bynum as well. Aaron Jones, I would consider bringing him back. Unless you're going to draft a running back, which there are plenty in this draft, he's the best running back on the market by a pretty wide margin. I'd bring back whichever one of the guys you want to start on your offensive line, whether that be Dalton Reisner or Cam Robinson or potentially both. They're going to be near the top of the market, but maybe they can get a little bit of a discount for a team that was as good as the Vikings were last season. There was a lot to think about and a lot to discuss, but when we get to the free agent targets, there are a couple more that I think the Vikings need to think about, right? First of all, we need to address the cornerbacks, right? You have almost all of your corners being out in free agency, right? Almost all of your corners in free agency. So I would bring back at least one. The one I say is Cam Bynum, but then someone else to go opposite of him. DJ Reed, Jonathan Jones. If you want to stay with a little bit of a veteran presence like you had with Stephon Gilmore, go out and get a Rasul Douglas, who's still available after leaving the Bills this season. At running back, you need to find someone. I think Aaron Jones is the best one out there, but an interesting one for me is going to be Najee Harris, right? Najee Harris is someone that is not a bad running back, right? Najee Harris is not a bad running back, but he's also not a great running back. If you get him behind a good offensive line, he's someone that can be important. He's someone that can be a big help, but he's also someone that hasn't really shown that explosiveness coming out of Alabama that you might have expected him to. The other key position of need is at defensive tackle. Although I have them addressing that in the draft, if you can't get it in the draft, going after a guy like a BJ Hill would be massive, right? You get a massive man up the middle. I love the way that BJ Hill plays the position. I'm not sure how well he fits into that Brian Flores defense, but getting a big defensive tackle as well would be huge. But when it comes to the draft, we obviously just did our mock. I have them mocked for defensive lineman Kenneth Grant out of Michigan, and that would address that defensive tackle issue. But if he's not available there, maybe you can get lucky and find a couple of these guys that I have ahead of them in the draft. Malachi Starks, who went 17 in mine. Mykel Williams is someone that, if they wanted to address the defense, should still be there as well. Shamar Stewart, if he falls, might still be there, and maybe you can get a straggler in that offensive line area if you are going to let some of your tackles go. But I think at the end of the day, you need to address the defensive tackle position. That's where the most depth is, where you're picking at 24. If you trade up, that is where you might be able to find a couple of places for maybe a corner or a safety to pop up. But overall, the perfect offseason for them is a healthy J.J. McCarthy. If he's not healthy, honestly, as much as it might be a meme or it might be a little bit of a joke, Aaron Rodgers is not the worst option for them, right? I think any quarterback could come into Minnesota and have success, but a guy that was a 4-time former MVP and still has a little bit of juice left, as much as it might not be great for the locker room, if you need a guy to just to be there for 1 year, if J.J. McCarthy truly isn't ready, it's not the worst idea to go out and get him. Give him that starting role until it doesn't work, or until or just for that one season, right? But if you really think J.J. McCarthy is ready, you don't need to do too much. You need to bring back a lot of the key pieces that are here or improve on them. The offensive line needs to be brought back or improved on in free agency. The defense, they need to bring a couple corners back or improve on them in free agency, but the good news is they have the money to do it. 6th most cap space in the NFL is going to do wonders for this team, and the Minnesota Vikings might not be as good as they were last season. 13 wins, I feel like it's not a fluke, but it's also not sustainable, but they should be flirting with double-digit wins next season as long as they're able to spend their money this offseason and draft successfully. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think is the perfect Minnesota Vikings offseason? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we finish off our show talking a little bit about baseball. The Cincinnati Reds, the last team in the NL Central to go over here. We'll talk about them, a young team with a lot of talent. Can they finally break through after a couple of seasons of being that close to being a competitive team? We'll be right back here on GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. Welcome back to GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, March 4th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over what a perfect offseason might look like for the Minnesota Vikings. In this segment, we turn our attention to the Cincinnati Reds. What is their season going to look like? The Cincinnati Reds have been so close to breaking out for 2 straight seasons. Is this the year we finally see them stay healthy and make a run at a wide-open NL Central? We'll answer that question in a second, but before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you're on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, March 4th. But like I was saying, we are going to get into the final topic here today. What is this season going to look like for the Cincinnati Reds? The Cincinnati Reds have been a team so close to breaking out. They have a lot of young stars on this team, but injuries have hampered them for a while, including last season where they went 77-85, finishing 4th in that NL Central and missing the playoffs. Most of the injuries that they've had to deal with have been in the pitching staff, where they have a lot of young talent. Hunter Green, for instance, dealt with some injuries. Nick Lodolo had a couple of injuries last season, but they have gone out and addressed a lot of those issues through trade, gotten some more depth, especially in the relief pitching area, although the bullpen still probably the weakest link. So what did they do in free agency? In free agency, they didn't do too much. They re-signed a couple of their guys, Brent Suter and Nick Martinez, as well as going out and getting Austin Hayes as a bench bat in a relief outfielder. They signed a couple guys to the minor leagues, and Joe LaSorsa, who's a solid lefty, and starting pitcher Wade Miley in case anything was to happen for any of their starters in the big league. They also brought in relief pitcher Scott Barlow on a 1-year, $2.5 million deal, so not too much. But where they really did this damage this offseason was in the trade market. They went and got a really solid reliever in Taylor Rogers from the Giants, giving up Braxton Roxby and some cash. With the Dodgers, they made a massive move. They acquired Gavin Lux, gave up Mike Sirota and a 2025 competitive balance pick in round A, as well as bringing in Jose Trevino for Fernando Cruz and Alex Jackson, and the big one. With the Royals, they gave up a really solid second baseman, a guy that won Rookie of the Year a couple years ago in Jonathan India, for starting pitcher Brady Singer, a guy I really love, and outfielder Joey Weimer. That is the big trade. That one and the Gavin Lux trade. They went and traded away India and brought in Lux to replace him. Although Fangraphs has Lux as a projected third baseman, I think he might go back to second. Matt McClain go to third. They have it the other way around. Despite that, this is a busy team. Outside of the trades, their losses, it was a lot, but it wasn't anything massive. They lost Ty France, who they took a chance on after he was struggling. Luke Malley, Jakob Eunice, Ahmed Rosario, Nick Martini, Buck Farmar, David Bachman, Justin Wilson, Ian Giebot. This is a team that really just got better this offseason. I really do love it. They kept their core intact. It's a young core. We look at this lineup. You have Spencer Steer, who's injured. He's not going to be there at the opening day, but he's someone that should come in and immediately make a huge impact on this team. But you've got TJ Friedel leading off. Matt McClain, if he's back, is going to crush. Ellie De La Cruz, superstar. Tyler Stevenson at catcher. Gavin Lux, who had a bad year last season but really turned it on down the stretch, as well as Santiago Espinal off the bench. Austin Hayes in left field with other guys off the bench. DH Jake Fraley or Stuart Fairchild. Heimer Candelario, who had a bit of a down year after really exploding at third base for the Nationals a couple seasons ago, but moving him to first base and keeping his bat in the order is pretty solid. And in right field, Will Benson or Christian Encarnacion Strand, right? This is a really good lineup. It's not a lineup that's going to blow you away, but it is a lineup when you compare it to a lot of other teams in this division, can go toe-to-toe with them. We talked about it with the Cubs. The Cubs got better. There's no doubt about it, right? The Reds got better. I don't think there's a doubt about it, but the Brewers got worse. The Pirates got better, but it wasn't really enough to push them into contention. And the Cardinals didn't do anything, which by nature of getting a little bit older with that team means you got worse. The rotation, though, is the crown jewel of this team, and as long as it can stay healthy, this is a team this is the rotation that can cause a lot of issues. Hunter Green, a flamethrower, a guy that if he stays healthy, again, he's had issues, but has been dominant when he's able to play baseball. Brady Singer from the Royals had a breakout season last year. As your number 2, I love it. Nick Lodolo at 3, amazing. Nick Martinez at 4 and Andrew Abbott at 5. This is a team that is ready to strike some guys out. This is a rotation that's not going to be easy to hit. Every fifth day is never going to be easy for anybody. This is a team that I really do love. I've had a weakness for the Reds for a little while just because I love the young talent that they have. Spencer Steer, Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, Tyler Stevenson, these young guys that are coming in and making huge impacts on the game. I think this is the year where they finally put it all together. The real question mark is that bullpen. Alexis Diaz is a little bit of a weak point when it comes to the closers, probably near the bottom of the league. Taylor Rogers is your setup man, solid with that, but the rest of that bullpen isn't great. Emilio Pagan, Sam Moll, Tony Santillan, Brent Suter, Scott Barlow, and Graham Ashcraft, who can come in and be a sixth starter if they need him to. It isn't the best, but I do think this team has promise. I do think this is a team that can really compete for that division crown. The Cubs, I think, are just a little bit better, but I think they can win a lot more than they're projected. Right now, I think they're going to go way over their over-under, which is set at 78.5. I think this is just simply a bad line. I think this is a team that is much better than that, at least wins 80 games. I have them winning 85, flipping their record from last season, going 85-77, finished second place in the NL Central. But this is a team that can very much compete for a wild card spot and can absolutely win this division if they get a couple of balls to bounce the right way this season. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think the Reds are going to do this year? Do you think they'll make the playoffs? Do you think this core will finally put it all together and stay healthy? And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of GSMC's Down by Contact Sports Podcast. I have been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We'll be back tomorrow, going over everything from around the world of sports, talking about the NBA power rankings as we do every Wednesday, and much more. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.